Hello and welcome back to SiGMA TV. Joining me here today is an expert in international gaming. Alidad Tash has over 20 years of experience in gaming, both in Las Vegas and Macau. He is currently the managing director of 28 Limited, a consultancy firm specializing in casinos and integrated resorts. Alidad, it is great to talk to you today. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Hope you're doing well as well.
I am very well, doing great. But before I do pick your brain, can you give us your background about gaming?
Sure, I've been in gaming for 20 years, exactly this month. I worked for 10 years for the Sands organization, the first six in Las Vegas, Nevada. And then I came to Macau and helped them open Venetian Las Vegas, going from Venetian Las Vegas to Venetian Macau. In 2010, I moved on to Melco Entertainment, joining City of Dreams, which is now called COD. I took on, in addition to my analytics role, I also took on a gaming operations role. I helped open Studio City, one of the integrated resorts also in Macau, and I left in early 2017. Since then, about 3.5 years ago, I've been doing consulting, like you said, specializing in Asia, Korea, Japan, Greece, and other locations.
Okay, well, you have quite a resume. Now, tell us about Macau. What has happened before and since the pandemic in terms of both medical response and financial effects?
Um, in terms of medical response, in terms of how the coronavirus is coming here, Macau is definitely within the top two or three regions in the world. Notice I'm using the word region as opposed to a country. And let me give the viewers a little brief history about Macau. Macau is not a country. Was ruled by the Portuguese from the 1550s until the end of 1999. So for over 400 years, the Portuguese ruled it. They gave it over back to China at the beginning or end of the 1999. So for the last 20 plus years, it's been under Chinese rule. Macau is technically part of China, although it is a special administrative region, much like Hong Kong, in that they do elect their own chief executive. There's some freedoms available here as far as internet access that may not be available in mainland China, which is probably 2 kilometers from my house. Macau is small, one of the smallest regions in the world. If it were a country, it'd be probably ranked more than number 200. It's only 33 square kilometers. By comparison, 33 square kilometers is tiny. The city of Paris is 105 square kilometers. New York City is 780 square kilometers. London is 1,500 kilometers, so it's tiny. And it's got a very high population density. It relies a lot on gaming. It is the only place in all of China that gaming is allowed. The Chinese do not like the fact that there's gaming going on, casinos going on. But when they took it back from the Portuguese, it came with this casino already, and they didn't want to go ahead and take that business away because that was a livelihood of many people. So with that said about Macau, Macau is immediately next to China. So back when China announced that the pandemic, the coronavirus back in, I believe, 21st, 22nd of January this year, Macau was panicked. And we suddenly went in a small place of only 680,000 people, we suddenly shot up to 12 cases, which was pretty big. At one point, it was number 2 or number 3 in the world in terms of the number of cases. But then suddenly, the chief executive, which was just elected end of last year. So he was only 6 weeks into his job when suddenly he was faced with a major crisis. And so far, the series of moves that he's done have been very, very positive. Even though the World Health Organization was against masks, he made it mandatory. He's worn masks every single day since then. So he led by example. Macau went from the 12 cases up to 46 cases, and that's it. In the last 7 months, roughly 7 months, Macau has had 46 cases, of which I believe 12 or 13 have actually entered Macau. The remaining 30 or so have been caught at the border because Macau effectively shut down its borders. It said, thanks, but no thanks. We don't want any visitors until we figure things out. Yeah. Tracing and tracking was innovated here. A lot of other countries tried to do the same thing. Macau was the first region in the world that shut down its casinos about a month or two before Las Vegas, Manila, Singapore, Australia. It's been really leading a lot of efforts. So in terms of coronavirus response, I believe the last time a single case entered Macau, wasn't caught at the border, was about 130 days ago. It's more than 4 months ago, in early April. We're shooting this in mid-August. So it's been phenomenal success. Testing is readily available, and you cannot give it any higher grade. It's probably ranks right up there with New Zealand and Taiwan as far as the best responses.
Amazing,
Now,
amazing.
second part of the question, you asked about how it's doing in terms of the gaming revenue.
Yes.
Well, Macau, again, most of your viewers, maybe some of those from Europe may not know this. Back in 2006, the year I came to Macau, Macau generated, its casinos generated $6.5 billion US dollars in gaming win, which is very much comparable. It almost tied with Las Vegas Strip and all its casinos, $6.5 billion. Since then, Las Vegas has still been doing $6.5 billion. So it's been relatively flat over the last 14 years. Macau got as high as 45 billion. And after a series of anti-money laundering, anti-corruption efforts, last year it generated 36 billion. So put it in context, what Macau does in 2 months, 6 billion, is roughly what Las Vegas Strip does in 1 full year.
Yes.
So that's the backdrop for what happened in 2019. What happened in 2020 has been challenging. We had a decent January naturally because the coronavirus didn't hit us until later that month. But February, the revenues, February, March, April, May, June, the revenues were down as low as 97, 98% lower than the year before, to the best month, I believe, was something like 88% down. So there were a couple months where what we made a single day last April, for example, a single day in April last year, casinos won more than the casinos won for an entire month of April. That's how bad it was. All of that did change until, well, there's hopes that a lot of things will have happened because of the big announcement last Tuesday.
What big announcements? Could you elaborate on this for the sake of our audience? And as not many of them may be aware and know about this too.
Absolutely. Macau is so tiny that it doesn't have any local gaming. All its gaming comes predominantly from Chinese and from Chinese gamblers, mainland Chinese, Hong Kong, and the rest of the world. What is surprising is that 80% of the revenue comes from just mainland China, 80. And another 10% comes from Hong Kong, and the rest of the 10% comes from the rest of the world, predominantly Asia.
Yeah.
What the announcement last week was effectively that people from mainland China are now welcome to come back to Macau. Those from the nearby province of Guangdong, the one that is immediately next to Macau, which generate about 40% of the visitation into Macau. They are now able to back to Macau using tourist visas, what they call here IVS visas. That will be available starting next week, which is a big deal because suddenly you're getting 40% of your visitors back, whereas before the number was
great
lower.
news for Macau.
That's only half the story. The rest of China, which is 1.4 billion people, are also able to come in here come end of next month, September, which is also welcome news. So you're going from 40% of the visitors to another 40% of visitors, doubling the number of visitors. In terms of gaming revenue, these people collectively, mainland China, accounted for 80% of all gaming revenue. So that's definitely welcome news. Macau is going to go, after doing 3, 4, 5% of what it did last year, to potentially a lot closer to 80% than the year before. So this is fantastic news. That said, that same night, the stock shot up. The next day, it went up even further. It was fantastic news. But I believe that analysts are a little bit optimistic, too optimistic about how soon things are going to go back to normal.
What do you mean?
Well, many of them said, oh, this is great. We're going to go back to the good old days. It's not going to happen so soon because, A, you're only responsible for 80% of the revenue. Even in the best case scenario, assuming all mainland Chinese are going to play at the same amount as a year ago, that's only 80% of the revenue. The other 20% is shut down. Nobody from outside the world, besides mainland China, Taiwan, and Hong Kong, in other words,
But
Greater China, is allowed to come back to Macau.
isn't 80 a big number still?
80 is a big
Don't you
number,
think? Yeah.
but it is a big number, but 80 is not 100. So first of all, 80 is not 100, so it's not going to go back to the good old days. The second one is 80 is not going to be 80, because think about a typical mainland person who a year ago was living wonderfully, had a great job, prospects were looking good, stock market was doing good worldwide, not just in China, but everywhere. The demands will just go on fantastic for iPhones, for anything else that the China, the factory of the world, creates. Those
Mhm.
people, first of all, not every one of them has the same job back. And not everyone worldwide has their jobs, which means that the demand for many of these goods has gotten lower. People don't buy as much clothes anymore. People don't buy as new iPhones anymore. People don't have as much luxury goods anymore, don't travel as
Mhm.
much. Therefore, the same 80% of the revenues that used to just come from mainland China is not going to be back to 80 because people are naturally cautious. That's the reason I want to hop on a plane. Why would I want to hop on a plane, risk potential disease, and get over
Exactly.
here and lose money that I may lose my job next month, or the demand is much lower. So
Yes.
I think it's
Definitely.
great news compared to 2, 3 months ago when
Mhm.
we were just floundering in the single digits compared to a year ago. It's fantastic to go into double digits, into the 50%, 60% more. But to expect it to go back to the 80% is a little bit too optimistic at this stage.
So when do you think things will go back to normal? I mean, given what you know, I mean, I know it's hard to make predictions, but what do you think about this?
That's a good question, and I don't think anybody's prepared to give you the answer as to when things will go back to normal. However, I can make a prediction on when things will not be going back to normal. In other words, there's a few factors that have yet to be determined. Will there be a vaccine discovered? Will the vaccine be effective? If the vaccine is effective, will it be available to 5, 6, 7 billion people around the world? Who wouldn't want to have this vaccine? This is a serious disease. Will the vaccine, even if adopted in Macau, in the US, in France, will everyone want to take it? There's a lot of anti-vaxxers out there who, for whatever reason, they may be too afraid or they're just against the concept of a vaccine. There's all these crazy
Mhm.
conspiracy theories. What's going to happen geopolitically? What's going to happen macroeconomically? Will the world go back economic-wise back to what it was for things to go back to 100%? And again, like good old days, I mean going back to 100%. Don't forget that even if China were to go back to normal, what's going to happen to Hong Kong, which has been devastated by a year and a half of unrest before the coronavirus, and since then it's been devastated by the disease itself. The rest of the world are not going to open up to Macau and vice versa. People are going to kind of mind their own business for a while until they get this degree of comfort. So that's all going to take some time for things to start normalizing. So will it happen in the end of 2020? Absolutely not. Will it happen in 2021 for things to go back to 97, 98, 100% of normal and even beyond? I don't think so. The earliest I can make a prediction that things will go back to normal would be sometimes in 2022, which is a year and a half away at the earliest, and perhaps the end of 2022. Again, assuming this is not going to get worse. 4 months ago, 5 months ago, had you asked me how bad is this going to get, I would have never imagined the US would have had 6, 7 million people affected. I wouldn't have expected the pandemic to go
Exactly.
so far, so fast, to go into the
Nobody
20
did,
million
yes.
plus worldwide. So we don't really know how bad it's going to get. The confluence of this nasty disease, coronavirus, and the fall in the northern hemisphere could wreak havoc worldwide. It could get a lot worse before it gets better. I hope not. So that's why I'm pretty confident it won't happen in 2021 or 2020. And hopefully it will be in the early 2022 as opposed to potentially 2023 or end of 2022.
All right. That is such a very thorough analysis. I love it. Fantastic insight. I wanted to move on and discuss with you another matter, Alidad, which is online gaming. Do you see the land-based casinos in Macau expanding to the sector?
Um, it's okay. That's an interesting question. Let me give a little bit of a quick history. China has never been into money leaving its country. It doesn't want money to leave its borders. And it's always been against online gaming, and in fact made a big deal about Cambodia and how it was allowing online gaming. So predominantly, most of the money was coming from Chinese gamblers, mainland Chinese gamblers. So it actually almost shut down the Sihanoukville, which is part of Cambodia, and its online gaming. And it's been asking the government of Philippines to slow it down. There's a lot of negotiation going on, but China prefers that no online gaming happens. A few years back, so in terms of online gaming, I think the likelihood of it, especially now that we've kind of gone past the closure of the casinos in early February, I think the time for that has gone by. I think that's very unlikely.
Mhm.
But proxy betting is quite reasonable. Let me explain what proxy betting is. Proxy betting
Please.
used to be legal in Macau. And it was a process by which you would be sitting in your office in Beijing, in Shanghai, somewhere deep into mainland China.
Mhm.
And you would be having your agent authorized on your behalf to go ahead and place bets on you, for you on the table. As far as the casino was concerned, they allowed communication between your agent, your friend,
Mhm.
who was authorized, and you telling you, hey, it was a banker, it was a player, it was a red, it was black. Um, and you would then be able to go and communicate to him legally that, okay, I want you to put $1 million on banker. I want you to put $500,000 on a tie bet. And the casino would then not have any money going on from you, but basically your chips would already be there and your chips would be physically placed. That practice, which is quite rational and reasonable, was already stopped, demonstrating that China is already against even that kind of gambling, let alone doing it with monies actually going back and forth, whether it's cryptocurrency or regular online gaming. One more thing to consider. In the off chance, 1 in a million chance that China says tomorrow, okay, casinos, go ahead. I'm going to allow online gaming. I've worked for these large integrated resorts. It's not easy for the IT department. It's not easy for the finance department. It's not easy for the interconnections and marketing department to be able to work, and even the legal department to be able to develop the infrastructure to allow large sums of money to go back and forth with security issues, cybersecurity issues, with and know your customer issues. It's 6, 12, 18-month project. So I just don't see in the short term this ever happening. I think if there's anything, the baby step or the walking would be the proxy betting return of it. And then the running would be something that's going to happen far down the line, if it were to happen 5, 10 years from now with online gaming. Again, once there is a degree of comfort and there's some assurances that no funny money, no cybersecurity, no
Mhm.
the people who are making the bets are doing it with real funds, and China's comfortable about that. So sorry for the long answer, but
No, it's fine.
effectively, I don't see it for quite some time.
I'm very enlightened right now with your explanation. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'd really love to further this discussion with you. I have so much more that I'd like to ask you about, like the evolution and the future of gaming in Macau. But perhaps we could reserve those follow-up questions, say next week or the week after. Would that be okay with you, Alidad?
Sure. If your audience is interested, if you're interested, I'd be happy to go and discuss again more nuanced or more different topics. But yeah, it would be my pleasure.
Oh, it would be an honor to have you again. Again, thank you so much for this very informative discussion, Alidad. I appreciate your time and I look forward to our next call.
Thank you very much. Stay safe.
And that is it for myself and Alidad. I hope you found this talk as interesting as I did. And if you do, please share your thoughts and what questions you would like to be answered by Alidad for the next session in the comments below. Your feedback is very important.